Anxiety didn't start with psychiatry, and treating it like a chemical error alone is one reason so many people stay stuck. Anxiety isn't new, and it isn't your enemy, but it does come with a cost most people never name. You can produce, you can push, you can build a good life, but you can't enjoy it, and you can't turn it off. Long before diagnostic manuals, neurotransmitters, or prescriptions, humans were already describing the same inner experience: dread, anticipation, unease, the sense that something might go wrong. They just used different language: moral, philosophical, or religious language, because that's the framework they had. We treat anxiety as a medical condition because that's our default cultural framework. Sometimes it's right, but that's not the whole story. And when we pretend it is, that same inner pressure that drives your success slowly erodes your ability to enjoy it. If we haven't met, I'm Doc Rock. I'm a psychotherapist, educator, and I spend my professional life helping people understand anxiety well enough to stop organizing their lives around it. Quick disclaimer: watching a YouTube video is not diagnosis or treatment. This isn't medical advice, it's education, meant to help you think more clearly about what anxiety is and how it works. Consult your medical professions about decisions, not Google. Alright, so psychiatry didn't invent anxiety. It inherited it, and it defined it. Modern biology is very good at describing how anguish shows up in the nervous system. It's much worse at explaining its purpose and how to relate to it. Historically, fear and worry were not treated primarily as a chemical error. They were understood as an assessment of circumstances, judgment, meaning, and behavior. Not instead of biology, but along with it. But here's the cultural error we commit: I must not be afraid in order to act. That belief ruins people. It ruins careers, and it messes up families. Courage doesn't come from the absence of fear. It's choosing the right behavior in the presence of fear. But we have a tendency to wait until discomfort goes away before we move forward. So when you get that sense of foreboding, people default to distraction or self-soothing or avoidance. Anything that reduces resistance in the short term. Relief gets mistaken for recovery. Anticipatory fear evolved for a reason. It connects the past to the future. A tiger was behind the last rock. Maybe there's a danger behind the next one. That ability kept our ancestors alive. Avoiding pain, discomfort, and threat, that's a key motivator to learn. Inner tension isn't the problem. In fact, managed anxiety is a competitive advantage. The problem begins when it stops helping you avoid threats and starts making you avoid opportunities. So here's the principle I want you to take with you. Emotions are an alarm system, not a directive. Alarms sound the same whether the threat is real or false. You've discovered this walking through any parking lot. Car alarms go off for all kinds of things that are not Grand Theft Auto. They're designed to be loud, not accurate. So are emotions. The demand is not immediate obedience. The task is assessment. Is there a real threat here? How likely is it? How bad would it actually be? Medication can turn the volume down, but judgment and behavior are what we do. In fact, they're the expression of life being lived. That life should come from conscious, thoughtful choice, not reacting unquestioningly to an alarm system. The alarm system is in the base of the brain. Assessment and planning is in the front. Two completely different operating systems, and they don't run simultaneously. That's why slowing down is so important. Strong negative emotions aren't the problem because they're intense. They're a problem because they often become authoritative. And most people think the dividing line is how bad it feels, but that's wrong. The real dividing line is who gets to decide what you do next. Here's a clean way to think about it. Fear is working when it informs your judgment. You make better plans, you think about worst case scenarios, and take steps to prevent them. You don't walk down the dark alley at night. You don't put all your investments into one stock. Anxiety informed your decision making. But what about when you cancel all your social plans? Or when you stop reaching out to new and old friends? You don't make any moves at all because you can't find the perfect one. That's anxiety dictating life to you. Anxiety becomes a problem when it issues commands. You stop asking, how do I get what I want or need despite these obstacles? Instead, you're only asking, how do I make these feelings stop? So here's a concrete example. You're considering a career move. It's not reckless, it's measured. You've done the math, you've saved money, you've talked to people who made the jump. Fear shows up, as it should. It highlights risks that you've missed. It pushes you to refine the plan. That's fear working well. When the internal dialogue shifts, though, what if the economy turns? What if you misjudged your competence? What if this is the one mistake you'll never recover from? No new information, no new planning, just tightening the circles around you. At that point, fear isn't helping you prepare, it's just keeping you stationary. Functional fear leads to better action. Dysfunctional fear leads to endless readiness with no forward movement. At that point, anxiety is no longer an alarm system. It's been promoted, illegitimately, to decision maker. That dreaded middle manager. Those expert decision makers who don't actually do the job. You've turned your inner life into a bureaucracy. Now, there are cases where apprehension is so biologically amplified that judgment isn't accessible. Panic disorders, trauma responses, depression, those things exist, and medication and structured treatment are essential. I'm not here to poo-poo psychiatry. But even then, medication isn't the sole solution. It's scaffolding. It lowers the noise so judgment and behavior can re-enter the picture. Therapy is choosing to fight for choice. It all works together. Psychiatrists perform their alchemy and their wizardry on the neurological, biological side of things. I work alongside them to restore personal authority so clients can live with clarity and confidence. So here's a way you can tell the difference without trying to become a Google expert. If anxiety consistently narrows your life instead of refining it, it's not productive. Protective alertness says don't touch the hot stove. Study for the test. Slow down. This is important. Problematic dread says don't even apply. Don't speak up. Don't risk being seen. Wait until you feel better. That common thread isn't fear, it's avoidance. And usually avoidance of an imagined outcome. Humiliation, rejection, regret, catastrophe, fun stuff. They get treated as if they're permanent threats. So here's a simple test. If anxiety prevents you from pursuing the life you want, not because of a real danger, but because of imagined catastrophe or social evaluation or distant what-ifs dangling on the horizon, then anxiety has stopped doing its job. At that point, avoidance isn't protective. It's letting the alarm dictate the response. In any emergency management system, the alarm should trigger an assessment. Then the assessment should trigger the response. Alarm goes off, you stop, you assess, you plan, then you execute. Note that it's not an immediate reaction to an alarm. So when fear shows up, I want you to stop. Not to calm down, not to breathe, but to slow your reflexes. You don't want to just react to noise. Then you assess the situation. Narrow the threat until it's specific enough to face. This is best done in writing. What exactly are you afraid that will happen? Name the loss, name the embarrassment, identify the risk. Precision matters in this step. Vague fear is paralyzing. Specific fear is workable. That's why this step is so critical. You can spend your whole life running from fears that you've never defined. Now, cognitive therapy would ask you to evaluate how likely it is that that fear would come about. Dialectical behavior therapy would bring your attention to the feelings or sensations related to those fears. And those are great methods, but we're not even doing that. This task is even simpler. Just a clear, detailed definition or description of the fear. That's it. Then plan. Not to eliminate the fear, but how do you move forward while managing it? What would reduce the risk or contain the downside? How do you meet your needs without pretending that the danger isn't real? Only then do you execute. Not because your plan's perfect, but because fear has done its job and no longer needs to be in charge. Your thoughtful brain is in charge now. I'm not saying go do dangerous things simply to get over anxiety. Right? Bringing decision making back to your thinking brain means you decide what the threat is and how to respond to it. Not your emotional brain, and certainly not some guy on YouTube. That's how anxiety stays useful instead of corrosive. It's not designed to keep you comfortable. It's designed to keep you oriented. You notice risk, you adjust, and you move forward intact. The obstacle isn't fear. The trouble is skipping steps and letting fear dictate unnecessary restraint. It informs your movement without dictating your life. And when you learn to do this consistently, especially with guidance, you're no longer simply seeking relief, you're rebuilding a coherent sense of self. Slow, steady, consistent micro changes have a huge impact over time. You start trusting yourself again. Not because anxiety disappears, but because it finally knows its place. It's a tool that you use to guide a prudent, courageous life. Not some authoritarian middle manager who tells you what to do without any real understanding of the task at hand. Now go build the life you want. Hit like and subscribe, so I'll see you again next week. And also, I'd love to hear about your successes in the comments below.